Welcome back to Live With, brought to you by Species Nutrition. I'm Dave Palumbo, and today's guest is a special one because he's a very good friend of mine. He's one of the guys that actually taught me how to train in the gym and kind of introduced me to the world of bodybuilding, at least competitive bodybuilding, at an elite level. And he also was a guy who was trained by Bob Gruskin from a very young age all the way up to the end of his career. And, obviously Bob passed a couple weeks ago. We did a big tribute to him. I wanted to save him separately because he's got some great Bob Gruskin stories as well. I'd like to welcome my good friend Doug Wentz to the show. What's up, Doug?
How you doing, Dave?
Now, Doug, we knew each other for a little bit prior to this, but one of the place we cemented the fact that we were going to train together and become training partners, I think this was back in 1991 or so, 92, I think it was at the Atlantic States. I believe it was, actually maybe it was 93 Atlantic States. You and I were sitting in the audience. We were sitting right next to each other, bullshitting up a storm, and Dorian Yates walks out 8 weeks out from Mr. Olympia competition.
Yeah, the famous guest posing.
Yeah, the Mr. Olympia where he really solidified himself as like unbeatable, and both of our jaws hit the ground. You remember that day?
Yes, I do. I remember that well because me and you were sitting there, and that was Bev's show, and I knew we probably had a couple of guys we knew that were in it. I really not even really thinking of going to see. Dorian did the show the year before, so he didn't really blow up and get that freaky until this show was his unveiling.
Yeah.
That guest posing was when he unveiled really what he was, because knowing the United States, you just saw those black and white photos of him in a black socks. Everybody was like, wow, look at those photos. And then when we seen him in person, you saw him. He was just a freak. When he came out, we were like, wow, we really got to up our game, man. I mean, he set a new standard back then.
No one was 300 pounds and looked like that. I mean, it's 6 weeks out from the show.
No one was that hard. He could have competed that day. He looked that good. He could have walked on stage that day and probably blew everyone away also.
I remember seeing his calves. They were so big. And you had big calves in the day, so I wasn't really enamored by people's calves, but his calves were so big, they almost looked like they were anchored to the floor because they were like tree stumps that he was walking out with.
And I think if I'm right, that's one of the first shows where guest posings where the guys would actually come into the audience.
Right.
Now, he stepped off stage, and when he stepped off stage and walked down in front of everybody, right in front of the aisles, you were like, "Oh my God, look at this!"
And I don't think Lee Haney had a big back in the day, but I don't think anyone's back was even remotely close to Dorian's at that point.
Yeah, the hardness and all that he had back then, no one had that, and that thick.
Lower lats, right? I mean, who had lower lats like that?
Yeah, he was definitely someone where when he showed up, he dominated. And like I like to see when you talk to Sean Ray and all these guys now, how they're all like, we were just constantly chasing Dorian.
Right.
And
you would think, these are genetically superior guys, probably on paper, Sean Ray and Lavroni and Wheeler and Cormier and that. But Dorian just maximized what he had, his gift so severely above what these guys were doing that he mentally had them beat. Yeah,
because you knew he was going to be on. Even regardless of what his genetics were, he was going to show up on. I don't really think until maybe the end did he come in off where he wasn't maybe his usual granite self, but most shows he went in, you knew he was going to win as soon as he came out in the lineup. Yeah, everybody was like, all right, who's second now?
Right. But also people don't realize he was 260 on stage back then. Like Wheeler was like 218,
and
it was like a big difference in size.
He's not a tall guy.
No.
He's not a tall guy.
No.
When you see him, he packed a lot of muscle.
Yeah. Let's take a step back now. So, when I met you, obviously, you had been pretty accomplished already. You had placed as high, I think, as second at the Junior Nationals. You had beat Paul DeMeo. You had a lot of momentum. You had been competing since you were a teen. You had a lot of experience, and that's, something that I lacked. I really didn't have anyone to kind of mentor me. And so when you said, "Hey, let's train," because you saw I was really enthusiastic about it. I used to come out. I used to go train people at Bally's. Doug would work at Bally's like at night. I had the morning shift. I would do personal training there. I'd go right from there to Doug's house. Doug would then drag me to the beach because he had to go to the beach every day.
Oh, we had to go to the beach. We had to do that Long Island beach workout lifestyle. We had to do that first.
Doug would mock me at the beach because I'd be bloated or something like that. And Doug would always have abs every 365 days a year. And
no one broke more lawn chairs than you. You were getting up. We'd go to the beach. It was like a common knowledge for your 300-pound big ass to jump in a lawn chair, in a chair, and that chair would not survive the day at the beach.
Doug used the same chair every single day.
Tell
Never
me
broke
if I'm
it.
fucking wrong. You know I'm right.
Yeah. He would bring me to Robert Moses Beach out on Long Island. We would have to make the trek out there. He had a whole ritual. And then we would have to go back, and we'd have to have a shake, and then we'd have to go. First, he actually would cook me lunch at his house, and then we would go to the beach. Then we'd come back, have a shake, and then go work out. And then Doug would go to work, and I'd go home and take a nap usually, but from being so exhausted for the day.
Go to World's Gym and train.
Yep. Now, your start was many years before that. Tell us about how you met Bob Gruskin and how that whole thing started.
Well, I was lucky enough to start training at Mr. America's gym, where I already knew Steve Mihalik and John Defendis, and I heard of Jerry. Jerry trained there. Jerry was just, he was the up-and-coming guy. And John to me was like larger than life. Right. Obviously, I'm this 15-year-old wrung out little bag of nothing seeing these guys train. And true to John's word, there were days when I would go in there and Steve and him would rope off about 6 different chest exercises, rope the section off, and do giant sets for like an hour and a half.
And you guys couldn't train there, right?
Oh, here I am, this 15-year-old kid watching that like, are you kidding me? Like, that's how you're supposed to train? Like, what do I know? So we did I think it was the 81 Mr. East Coast in Jersey. At the time, it was a big show, national qualifier. I had no business going in that show. I figured I'd go in the teenage division. Right. Here I am thinking I'm pretty good. I'm all ripped up. I got good abs. I'm eating cheeseburgers and everything else. That was my diet. My diet was, back then, I just didn't put ketchup on the French fries. I put French fries with ketchup. Like, that was diet.
And you still got ripped. That was the funny thing.
Yeah, exactly. So here I am showing up. And backstage, Bob comes walking up. Hey, how you doing? You look good. You got nice lines. And I'm like, lines? I don't know what the fuck lines meant.
Right.
I don't know. Okay. Hey, let me take a couple of shots. And I'm like, wow, for a couple of minutes, I'm hitting poses, and I'm thinking, wow, man, this is like a dream come true. Here I am, my first show, and this guy wants to take photos of me. And then he goes, I want you to meet somebody. And, of course, like everyone attested to before, Bob showed up with this bodybuilder named Victor Shabinin. And Victor was this big Matt Mendenhall, blonde, awesome-looking physique.
What was his last name?
As a teenager, Victor Shabinin.
Okay.
And, Bob bring him over. I want you to introduce you to Victor. This is, a guy I'm working with. And I was like, oh, my God. And, of course, Victor was perfect. The tan, the trunks, the hair, the physique. He had it all.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow. Back then, it wasn't uncommon for Bob to show up with teenagers that would win the overalls.
Wow.
I remember going to a couple of shows with Bob, and he would bring a teenager or two, and they would win the overalls, too. They were so good.
That's nuts.
Back then. So I'm like, wow, I'm blown away by that. And later on in the show, Steve Mihalik shows up backstage, and I'm with one of the managers from the gym, and I have no coloring on. So Steve's got this bottle of some goopy gop crap coloring that we're going to now apply right this minute, minutes before going out on stage. So I got this black pasty shit coloring all over me. So I walk out on stage, the lights hit me, everything is running all over my face. So bad where the judge goes, excuse me, competitor number 13 on the left, can you walk off stage and please wipe yourself down? Here I am, 16 years old. You want to talk about embarrassed? I was like crawling off the stage. So I grab, someone throws me a towel, one of the expediters, and I go to wipe myself, and I wipe a white mark completely down my body. So I walk back on stage like, just shoot me now. Shoot me. I was a total mess at that show.
Wow.
And that's the first show where I really met Bob. And I didn't wind up working with Bob until maybe 2 or 3 years later at the Teenage Eastern USA. Right. When I won that in the city. But he also worked back then with, John, Jerry, and Twilliger. So every once in a while, Bob would come down to New York, and he would give me a call and say, listen, we're going to be at East Coast Gym or America's. Do you want to come down and train? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. So little by little, I would start bumping into him again at competitions here and there. Right. and also see him once in a while. He would come out on a weekend, and I would go to the gym, and he would talk to me, and then he would call me once in a while, talk about training. And I remember saying to Jerry, I go, Jerry, who's this guy Bob Gruskin?
Yeah,
who's this guy? Guy calling me? I don't know. He's kind of a weird guy. But Jerry, are you kidding me? Bob's calling you? Bob's the man. Like, Bob trained everybody, and I was like, oh, okay. So then
you were okay, because Bob could be.
Now I'm trying to get his number to call him.
Right. If you don't know Bob, he looks weird. He looks like a weirdo or something like that. You don't realize how smart the guy is. You know.
He didn't. Furthest thing though, I'm used to being around Mihalik and John. Like these are guys that were mentors. Like I didn't expect to see Yoda. The bodybuilding Yoda. Come walking in. That's Bob. Bob is the Yoda.
Right. Right.
And so it was definitely once I knew that he worked with Jerry and everybody, I said, okay, I guess this guy's, really legit. Right. And then at the Eastern USA Teenage Show, he came backstage and he said, let me just let you know, you're going to win the show. I was like, really? He's like, yeah, you're going to win the show. And do you want to go in the Teenage USA NPC coming up next year? Because I think I just turned 18 or 19 then.
Oh, okay.
And I said, all right. He goes, it's in Florida, Miami. I don't think I've ever been on a plane.
Oh, wow, really? Oh, my God.
So he's like, I got your plane fare. We got the hotel. We're already set.
Really? Wow.
I want to start coming out to my house. I didn't have a car then. I was too young. So back then, I didn't have a car. So I think Jerry would take me out there once in a while.
Yeah.
Or Bob would take the train to Babylon train station.
Really? He'd come see you? Wow, that's crazy.
Remember Babylon, that apartment in there?
Absolutely.
He would take the train there. So I would find rides out there and go see him. So really, that's the first time I actually then worked with Bob for a show.
And it's amazing when you look at the guy. The guy had amazing insights into training, posing, performance enhancing stuff. But he didn't look like he ever lifted a weight a day in his life,
No. And that's what really threw me off. And when I started then that first show working with Bob, it was going out maybe once a month. He would take your measurements. He would weigh you. You would pose. And then as the show built up, then he's like, okay, now you got to go on a diet. I said, well, yeah, I do my diets. I went to Easterns like eating shit, eating anything. And he's like, no, we're going to go on a real diet. So now I'm on a real diet, protein diet and all. Yeah. And really I didn't realize what it was like getting to that level when you started working with Bob, closer to the show. You live at his house, you're going through all that, and taking the plane ride down to Miami. And I remember getting to the airport, and it was, you remember in Scarface in the beginning where they put all the immigrants underneath that riot scene.
Yeah,
that was really going on when we landed in Miami then, because it was in. I remember driving by there in a cab, and I go, what's going on? The cab driver goes, oh, those are all the detainees from Cuba or something. They threw them all in there. So that was at that time.
Culture shock for you, for sure.
Bob, then you're getting introduced to diuretics and cutting your salt and your sodium. And I'm like, what do you mean cut my salt? I drink, eat, and everything. Yeah. Oh, no, we don't do that. This is a national show. I'm like, I just won Easton's. Like, I'm the shit right now. Yeah. I don't need a diet. But no, once you got there and you saw Eddie Robinson won my class, Franco Santarelli won the light heavies.
Wow.
It was like these guys were like men. Like they had physiques, mature, ripped muscle. I mean, it was 14 light heavyweights.
Wow.
I got third. And I was happy. I was going there thinking I'm going to win everything.
Yeah.
When I got there, I got in the top 3, top 5, I was thrilled. I was like, you kidding me? I'm like thrilled, man. I'm just here now.
Crazy.
So it's definitely intense.
The guys back then at the teen level were so good compared to what you see nowadays. Why do you think that is?
Back then, so many guys, there were so many teenagers. When I compete and did a teenage show, even the local shows, like when I did the Eastern and I won that, there was like 10, 12 guys in my class up to lightweights. Everybody had like almost double figures of guys.
Wow, that's crazy.
So I think back then people were just so much more into the training. Now, I don't know. I don't know why teenagers really aren't into it like they were, or you see that next freak that, really came out of the woodwork, to compete. Nowadays, I don't think it's exciting enough. I think they look at it as like too many teenagers, too many other things to stimulate them. To me, being a teenager working out back then, you know, there wasn't a lot to do. You know, I had my little garage gym.
Right.
On the weekends, I trained at Mahalik's, and during the week with my brother-in-law, and during the week, I trained at my garage gym.
Wow.
You know, and even in school, it wasn't big. Like now, it's so much bigger now, working out.
Yeah.
I'm shocked that there's not a slew of great teenager guys coming out. You know, and you don't
can't figure it out.
Yeah, you really don't see it.
If you were competing today, you think you would still have gravitated toward bodybuilding, or you think classic physique? Because you had the small waist and the you know, it was a good
I think
poser.
classic. I think right now, because it was height, you know, that's why I do regret not doing an AAU show back then, because I wanted to do, because it was height. Like I probably would have done better in a medium tall class than a heavyweight class.
Gotcha.
As you know, when I did the heavyweights, you know, there was like Jason Arntz and these guys. You know, these guys are like 5'6", 5'7", you know, packed with 210, 220 at the limit.
Yeah.
You know, so that's, I think classic definitely would have been better for my type of structure.
Plus the way you posed on stage. Did Bob teach you how to pose, or did you learn all that on your own?
Well, I thought I knew how to pose until I met Bob. And Bob, you know, to me, I thought everything was Arnold, like pumping iron. Like I grew up, pumping iron was my Bible. And if Arnold did that twisting shot, I'm doing that twisting shot. And there was a lot of those shots, obviously, you know, if you don't have the arms and all to do it. So Bob was really good also at seeing you pose and saying, okay, Bob would be nice and say, that's not a strong shot for you. Try this one. You know, he knew you're good shots. So he put me through the paces of posing as far as a workout goes. Like a lot of guys nowadays, they don't have posing endurance. You know, to me, there's cardio endurance and there's posing endurance.
Right.
You know, I mean, I help Dave, you know, once in a while over at our gym with some guys, and they'll come in and I'll go through some posing paces and they're like gasping. Yeah. I'm like, these guys, you know, Bob had you where you posed like constantly, where I'd be waiting at the line at the supermarket with food and I'd be like flexing my legs, standing there like I'm in the lineup or something, practicing as I'm lining the supermarket.
Jerry Scalisi told me he never did cardio. Was that because Jerry didn't like cardio, or did Bob not believe in cardio?
I didn't do cardio. A lot of us, no one really did cardio back then. The 80s like that. Cardio wasn't, I mean, the gym I trained at was Future Man, Future Physique, this ratty little gym. Right. It had one Tintori bike in the corner, and that was it. You know, we dieted, you trained, you probably did more volume then. Right. I would think than probably now. But the cardio thing, I really just got into doing that maybe the late 80s, 90s.
I wonder why guys didn't do it. Was it with the diets lowering carbs back then? I mean, what do you think the reason was? Because guys got in shape.
Well, I think guys dieted. I don't think anybody got out of shape that bad as they do now. Like, you know, you didn't get guys blowing up to 300 pounds and had to lose 60. You know, I mean, you got big in the off season, but not to where it is now. Where now, I think, you know, you have to do cardio. If you're a 300-pound guy and you're 5'9", I don't know. I know Phil Heath gets big in UFC, but they have to do cardio to get down all that weight.
Right. Let me ask you a question. Now, when I met you, I thought I knew how to train, you know, until I got into the gym with you, and I realized I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. And you corrected exercise form, made sure my everything was right. And so when I started training the right way, my strength went up tremendously because I was using the right muscle groups. Where did you get that body awareness and the ability to know how to position your body properly to get the right development? Because I think a lot of guys, when I see guys with weak upper chest, it's because they don't know how to train their chest. When I see guys that don't have leg development, it's because really they just don't know how to train their legs properly. Where did you learn your form and how to execute those exercises so perfectly, really?
Well, again, a lot of that was from Bob, because I thought I trained good and strict, because again, even when I trained at America's early in the day, you know, guys weren't, you know, sloppy. Like, to me, if you train big and sloppy, you look big and sloppy. Right. You know, that's just kind of how I always went. So Steve and those guys were always good on form. And I remember when I did my first couple of training sessions with Bob would strip weight off and make me do it slower and squeeze. And I'm like, Bob, but I can do more weight the other way. Yeah. He's like, yeah, well, do the weight right now. Your muscle doesn't care if 200 pounds or 400 pounds you're benching. If it's getting stimulated, it's getting stimulated. Right. And that's really where I learned to slow everything down, hold, squeeze, and contract. Because, again, I wasn't one of these genetically freaky, strong guys that could just pile on the plates and bench. You know, if guys have that ability, you know, God bless you, do it. But there's going to be a certain point where the returns aren't going to come because you can't, you know, after you hit a 400-pound incline, what am I going to do? Go to 500? Like if 300 isn't doing it, 400's not going to do it.
Right. One of
you
the
know,
things
so I think as far as the form and the technique, even now when I train someone in the gym, a younger guy who's doing his thing workout-wise, I'll get a hold of him for a chest work, and he goes, I feel like such a pussy when I train with you because I'm training so lighter. I said, yeah, but guess what? If you stick to it long enough, you're eventually going to become stronger in those lifts.
You're 100% right. I'll tell you why. Because I was not a genetically strong person either. But because you were stronger than me when we started and bigger than me when we first started, you pushed me but trained me the right way, and I got strong. Like you said, as I put muscle on, I got stronger because I was executing the exercises properly. Also, you would be the kind of guy that, like, I'd go into the gym with Doug. I didn't know what we were going to do. He basically ran the workout. So I thought I knew the workout. So I would come in, all right, we're going to do inclines, we're going to do this. And all of a sudden you'd be like, all right, we're going to do clean and jerks today. I'm like, what? What clean and jerks?
Yeah.
What the fuck's that? Oh, we're doing them. And I just followed you. But
exactly.
The shock, you were good at, like, changing things up and shocking the body every once in a while when we got a little stagnant, you know.
Yeah, and again, from a genetic standpoint, I wasn't one of those easy gainers, you know, that just blew up training. You know, I had to kind of figure it out and say, all right, well, this is my kind of body, and I may have to struggle a little more to put weight on and put muscle on. And I really wasn't that powerhouse guy, so I had to be able to execute that form. And thank God I did, because, you know, I was able to really get I probably got the most mileage out of my physique as I could from a training standpoint, to be able to hit target area muscles that you can't hit if you're going too heavy. Like me and you talked about, I see the videos now and everybody's doing this short, choppy motion. You know, Bob hated that. Bob's like, lock out at the top, make sure you're coming down. And again, I felt I was doing a light workout, but the next day I was sore as shit. And even though he didn't train, he knew. He knew multiple angles that's going to put that stress on your muscle, and that's it.
Yeah. And,
you know, he knew that.
All the Gruskin guys, and I would lump myself in there, because even though I didn't train under him, I trained via you, so I got that same look, had that complete development, like separated pecs. I mean, why do you think that was that diet related? Was it training related? You could spot a person who was under Bob's tutelage a mile away at the shows.
Yeah. Well, also, if you always spotted one of Bob's guys because they had legs.
Right.
Every one of Bob's guys had legs. Bob first would say, okay, what are your legs like? Because he knew legs was the hardest thing to get.
Yeah.
If you had that, but Bob was so good at being able to pick that right physique, that right guy that had the right lines, and with the right training, eating, everyone looked not the same, but everybody resembled a finished, polished look. And that's what everybody had. If you notice, you didn't come in with your coloring not right, smooth, not being able to pose. Like, you know, me and you always talked about, don't beat yourself. You could always control your conditioning, your coloring, and your posing, regardless of your genetics. And Bob had everybody on such a system that last week where everybody knew you were going to dry out, you were going to get ripped, your coloring was going to be perfect, you were going to be able to not only pose really good, but also how to just stand. Bob was great at teaching you how to just stand and present yourself standing in a lineup. Bob would say, you standing in a lineup is the most important pose there is.
It is, it's true.
And he would say that. Just standing in a lineup with your arms out and your feet together. To him, that was it. And I think all of us always had that finished, polished look where your physique was balanced, because throughout the year, you would go and see Bob, and he would weigh you, and he would measure you, and he would say, you know, you got to build up this, you got to build up that. You know, if not, everyone's just going to train their strong points every day. You know, if you have no one to be critical on you, oh, my arms are great, I'm just going to kill my arms every day. Forget my legs.
I'll tell you another thing that Bob, and I know you obviously got that from Bob too, is, and I'll just give my personal experience with you. When I would come in and pose for you, I think I was like 4 weeks out from like a show or something like that, and you said, you know, what are you eating? And I thought I was shredded, and I probably was harder than most people at that point. And I'm like, told you what I was eating. I think I was having like an extra shake at night. He's like, what do you need all that extra food for? I said, well, I don't want to lose muscle. You're like, you're not going to lose muscle. And I reluctantly went home and listened to you because I was like, look, I don't know what I'm doing anyway. And my whole physique changed after I got rid of the extra food. Do you think guys eat too much nowadays? I know Bob was the guy's eating too much food. I know even Rosito told me he would put guy like Jerry on 2-3 meals a day to get him in shape.
Well, that's interesting that you say that because I guess maybe the last year or so I started getting into watching a lot of what these guys are eating, and you have to eat more calories. Like you have to eat until you're uncomfortable. Like again, and you would, to me, you were the ultimate guy as far as food, and you always talked about Dr. Mike getting enough protein in and all that. Yeah. And the food I hear these guys eating today, I'm like, are you kidding me? Like I thought back then, we ate a lot of food, but now I think guys are more. I think there's more food now being eaten, and I don't know if they need that much food because, certain physiques, I guess Jay Cutler, he's a big carb guy. I think now the level of food these guys are eating is just unbelievable. I don't know how they could actually stomach it all in.
Well, Doug, but we're not seeing the dry, grainy looking physiques on stage, with the exception of a couple guys. I don't want to say everyone, but look, you saw the Olympia last year. We're not seeing the conditioning level, aside from guys like Dexter Jackson, maybe William Bonac, that we should be seeing on that stage. Is it because guys are afraid to suffer? Everyone's worried about muscle loss,
Well, exactly. I think you hit it right on the head because, even back then, muscle loss. Bob, the last week of the show, you didn't train. You did not train the last week of the show. You spent Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday doing photo shoots at the gym.
Interesting.
You would do 2 body parts, and it would be almost an hour and a half to 2 hours per body part.
Wow. Holy shit.
You would wear your trunks. He would get the photo cameras out, and you would hold the incline press. All right, hold it, flex. All right, bring it down. He would make you do that over and over again from like multiple angles. And by the time you were done, you were shot. And then you would go back to his house. Like that last week when Bob was feeding you, believe me, Bob wasn't afraid, to eat like that. We were all, you were eating probably more food I ate than when I was at home when I was with Bob, because Bob had you more on a timed out way. But I think now everybody eating all this food and blowing up like that. Let's put it this way. Are they bigger now? Yeah, guys are bigger and way more, but I don't know if they're better. Like, I don't know if guys are better like that.
Do you blame it on the judges, though, for saying, oh, guys got to be fuller? Everyone's worried about being full enough on stage. I always say conditioning wins shows, and I've never seen a guy where someone said, well, he was too conditioned. Have you ever seen that? Yeah. Andreas Munzer was never too conditioned on stage, No.
Nowadays, I don't think anybody goes up there and they're too ripped.
Yeah.
You don't see that. I don't think anybody's too ripped now. I don't know if you really see that. You see a couple of guys that come out and they're really in shape and all, but now, no, you don't see the level of conditioning, and I'm surprised too because guys nowadays, there's so much information. Yeah. There's so much different ways to train. There's so much this, that. Like you could take a guy with decent genetics, he can go online and learn how to eat, train, and take a cycle for stuff for a show. In 3 years be a pretty decent physique guy. And I'm surprised that with all this technology and all this sharing of information everyone does, guys aren't really better. Like, I don't know if they're better now. Yeah. Other than Phil Heath being dominant, I don't know. Look at that Olympia lineup, and I was thinking of, like, Jerry or Jeff, any one of those guys probably would have placed, top.
Absolutely, yeah.
Come on. If you look at size, hardness, and all that together, and, I think now everybody's just bigger, but I don't know if it's better. I don't know if it's better.
Now, you told me a very similar story once, and I'll repeat the story, and then you can talk about it. And Aceto told me a very similar story. Back, when you guys were first starting, anabolic steroids were not illegal. They, you can get them from a pharmacy with a regular. A lot of times you just go to the pharmacy, and they were regular prescription. And you told me a story where, because nowadays guys can't take enough stuff, right? Back then, Bob would give you a bag of stuff that he'd get from the local pharmacy, and you told me you used to give it out to your friends because you thought he was crazy with what he wanted you to take, and you probably were taking nothing compared to what the guys take today.
It was, but I trained probably, I don't know how many years, on like a little nothing for sure. I didn't even take anything.
Right.
The first few times, and he was also one of the few guys where after a show, you went and got blood work. Right. He would take you to Manhattan, to see Dr. Ludwig, who was like even more of a grizzled old Yoda guy than Bob was as far as what he knew.
Yeah.
Like I would go in the room with them and just watch them go back and forth. I didn't know what the hell they were saying, but it sounded so cool because I knew whatever it was, it meant I was going to get maybe bigger or better.
Yeah.
So that they way ahead of his time in that regard.
But it's amazing how big the guys were, though, Doug, given the fact that they weren't using a lot of drugs. So, I guess what I'm trying to get at, was it the training and the knowledge that you guys really put into that?
It was the training. I'll tell you what it was. I was thinking of this the other day. It was the training and the knowledge throughout the year, because you had that one guy to go to and check in with.
Right.
If you made the effort, Bob was always there. A lot of guys didn't make the effort. A lot of guys lived out of state. And they would only come down once or twice a year.
Right.
And then only come and see Bob maybe that last week or two before a show.
Right.
By then, it might be too late. Where Bob was a wizard was the last week.
Right.
That last week. Because really, genetics aside, muscle building, fat burning, all that shit, you did all that homework. Now you showed at Bob's on Monday. Okay, now my show is on Saturday.
Right.
So from Monday on, he had the system down. The first 3 days were kind of normal as far as what you ate. And then by Thursday, you would drop your carbs and drop your sodium, take a diuretic or two, take an aldactone. By the next day, okay, let's see what you look like. If you're cramping up, he would up your food a little bit. Yeah. He was a master.
But no one did that back then. I don't think people told me that they didn't even know what diuretics were back then.
No,
he was the first guy with diuretics, right?
I remember going to shows with Bob and meeting other bodybuilders. Bob knew everybody.
Yeah.
So guys would, we talk you backstage. You talk to you guys about what, how you training, what are you eating. Right. And I would say, so I'm on my second. I took a half aldactone. The guy goes, "What's aldactone?" Like they didn't even know. And I look back now, and I was so lucky, really, at that beginning part of my bodybuilding career, to obviously have like Terwilliger and Jerry and John Defenders right in my backyard. Right. They were local guys who I always looked up to them. Yeah. And then to have someone like Bob who had this system of, like, to me, I thought all bodybuilders cut their carbs out and drop their sodium. Right. And little did I know, like you've heard before, all these bodybuilders calling Bob's house asking for help. And I realized that a lot of those guys, the only reason they were good was because they were genetically good. Right. So they would have been good no matter what they did, as you know. Yeah. So I was really lucky that to grow up in that era of being able to have Bob's system. So to me, when I started helping guys like you, Justin and everybody else, I just took that system and said, okay, well, and really, if you look at it now, that is the template for the modern day system.
I took the system and then made it my own, and Justin took the system and made it his own, and we all did the same thing. I mean, it was really Bob who really spread the word, so to speak.
And that last week, you didn't hang out with your girlfriend. You didn't nothing. You went there, and for those 3 days, you did your training photos. Yeah. You came back. You ate. You did more posing. You went in that basement. You watched movies. You had your own room. You went to bed. It was like bodybuilding boot camp. You couldn't fuck up. Right. Like, he didn't have food to go eat in the middle of the night. Like, it wasn't there. It didn't exist. I remember getting up late and eating. I'm like, shit, man, I'm hungry. Yeah. And Bob would always be up. No matter what time of night, he was always up.
Yeah, he's like Chris Aceto.
He's got the photos going something. And then that last week, posing, doing all that. And then those last 2 days before you left were just, you'd go outside, because it usually was nice. You did training photos outside, training photos in the basement. Yeah. He would look at your food, and you spent Wednesday to Friday doing your coloring all night long.
Yeah, that was the worst part of it. Thank God that spray tanning was invented, because that was the most brutal part of the whole thing.
Oh, it really was. You remember, like I did to you guys back in the day.
I wanted to kill myself.
Me, you, and Barbara. Yeah. Me, you, and Barbara in the fucking, because you were so big. I'm like, Barbara, my arm's killing me. You got to get another fucking leg. I can't do this all night. But you know what? That painstaking way of doing it with that little cloth rag he had, was the best. And you'd wake up and you would be like, within the next morning with the diuretic and the food and the salt and the coloring, you'd wake up and you say, holy shit, I can't believe what I look like now.
The funny thing was, here's the funny thing, you would talk about where all the information came from. Before I met you, one of the first shows I did, but it was really the second show I did, but that I actually knew what I was doing. I had a guy who was living in Westchester because I was up in medical school, and I had a guy by the name of Peter Neff helping me. And little did I know that Peter Neff was another Gruskin disciple. So I learned the same technique from him, and then you kind of reinforced it. I was lucky to have a consistent, application of that. So it really reinforced it in my head. And then obviously I had the educational background, to really apply it on even a higher level. You did,
which is good because you got good real quick. You got good fast.
But you know what it was? It was a science. People didn't realize.
I seen you at Jones Beach the first time I ever just seen you. I didn't know you at the time.
Yeah.
And somebody go, that guy Dave. I think you did a local show, and you were pretty big then.
Yeah.
And you were eating a big hero. You had a big ass hero you were eating. And I remember then later on meeting you, and then I said I seen you at the beach, but you got good fast.
Yeah.
Because again, you took everything you knew and you kind of put your whole medical spin on it and said, you know what? You knew what was right for your body. You're not a big carb guy.
No.
You were kind of a big protein fat guy.
Yep.
You knew that worked for you. But the last 3 days of that water manipulation, that's a rare science that even to this day, I can't tell you how many guys would show up at Bob's out of shape and looking like crap. And Bob, within 3 days, you look like unbelievable.
I applied those exact principles exactly as you showed me. Like for most of my career, the second half of my career, I started modifying a lot because I found that I didn't personally need as much diuretic because I wasn't retaining as much water. But when you're early in your career, you have a softer look to your physique, and then as your physique matures, it seems like things change. And I think that's important as a coach to be able to make those accommodations. And that's something that Bob was brilliant at. He would look at someone and he wouldn't tell the same person to do two different people to do the same exact thing. Each person had their own little protocol to follow.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he knew what each guy really needed. And like you heard before with everybody, Bob also knew, how to push your buttons. He was great at when you were competing in a show. When he told me to do that teenage show, I said, okay, I'll do the Teenage National. Here I am now working with Bob for a little while, getting ready for that Teenage USA. And after that show, he goes, oh, by the way, a week later is the Teenage America in Worcester, Mass. Mm-hmm. Do you want to go to that? And I was like, okay. And Bob also back then, a lot of guys didn't do it. Bob always believed in doing multiple shows.
Yeah.
He always believed in doing a warm-up show and then your show to initiate. He didn't believe in just, I'm peaking for that one show.
You told me that too.
Because he always thought, it took you this long to get in shape. There's 3 shows of the next 3 weeks. Do them.
Yeah.
If you can do them, okay, fine.
That was before it cost $150 to enter a show also. It was only $10 then.
Yeah. But, back then, when you're working up to that show, Bob then would show me pictures of Teddy Lopes. At the time, Teddy Lopes was this big Lee Haney-looking freaky guy with the physique and the width of the back. And, as teenagers, I'm like, oh, my God. I go, Bob, I can't beat him. He goes, well, we'll see. Teddy's a nice guy. He's a good guy. You'll see. Well, we'll see what happens. Yeah. We'll see what happens. He would just say, you don't want to say, yeah, you're going to get your doors blown off, kid. But like that stuck in my head.
Right.
And Teddy wound up being a great guy. After the Teenage USA, we met him down at the house. He had a car. We drove down to Massachusetts where he was from. His father owned a restaurant. We all ate there. We got a hotel together. We did coloring. We wound up becoming good friends, good guy. And he did wind up beating me. I got second in that show.
Oh,
I was like, shit, man, I would have won that if he wasn't there that night.
Well, you're not the first person to tell us that story. A lot of people say that if it wasn't for Teddy Lopes, I would have won the show too. I forget who else I just had on, and we were talking.
Yeah.
He beat someone else.
Yeah, he was good. He was a freak.
Right. Maybe it was Jeff King who told us that story. Also, I think he did.
Yeah, he was good, Teddy Lopes. So Bob was always famous for getting you. And Peter Neff, I think, holds the record for the most shows done in 1 year.
Oh, really?
I think him and Bob did like 13 shows in a row. Like, it was this ridiculous number that no one could ever fathom. But Bob, Peter did like 10 shows in a row.
Yeah.
Like, how do you do 10 fucking shows? But he did. Peter was a freak like that. He was a little, like, he had big legs. He had the good leg, natural.
He was all natural, the guy, right?
Yeah. So, it was amazing.
Yeah, no, I learned a lot from him too. Now, interestingly, just in your own career, a lot of people don't, know anything about you, or they don't know much about you, but you were really rising up the ranks pretty quickly. I mean, you had that one junior nationals. You actually beat a young Paul DeMeo there. I mean, you were on top of the world for a little bit. What was it like at that level when you started achieving, monumental, victories,
Well, still at that level, when I won a few local shows, and I knew after doing the Teenage USA that year that going to a national show was such a big difference. So it was nice. I did a couple of local shows to qualify.
Yeah.
But that first junior national show I did, I actually competed as a light heavyweight, my first junior national show.
Oh, I didn't know
and
that.
I was getting, I think, 4th or 5th in the class,
Right.
and Bob Cicciarillo won that show.
Ah, right, okay.
Bob Cicciarillo won the heavyweight and the overall
Right.
at that junior national show.
That's funny.
So it wasn't until the following year that I became a heavyweight. And then once I became a heavyweight and I saw DeMeo backstage and all, I was like, oh my God, like that was, that was pretty, to beat him.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, I was thrilled. And actually the year after that is when I had my injury with my neck.
That's when Doug got his neck cut in a barroom brawl.
That kind of, I was able to come back and make a good comeback. That was when I really was, I think, first meeting you.
That's when I started working with you, yeah. Right after.
My first comeback show was the Eastern Grand Prix in West Babylon High School.
Yeah, you won that.
After that. But it was just 10 times harder after that with the injury.
You
with
couldn't
the nerve
train
damage.
right. You couldn't squat with a regular squat bar. There was a lot of things because Doug's trap basically lost its, you lost your trap.
A lot of things.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was disheartening to do that show. And I remember after that show coming home from the hospital.
Yeah.
Because it was quickly after that show that I got messed up with my neck.
Yeah.
And I came home and it was a whole answering machine full of all kinds of things from magazines and Sports Authority wanted me to come in and do something for them back then. And I was like, I told my mother, erase it all, Ma. I don't care. Erase it. I'm done, And so it took a good year to come back from that.
You had the long blonde hair. He had the whole Bob Gruskin, good-looking guy thing. You had the marketability through the roof. How that you pretty much had your whole life poured into bodybuilding. I mean, devoted to that. That was your thing. I mean, you trained people, you worked at Bally's, but you were bodybuilder, 100% devoted to it. To have that taken away from you like that in one swoop of a barroom brawl, I mean, that you really weren't even involved in. How how did that affect you mentally? I mean, it had to really be
mentally,
a blow.
I came back and definitely, obviously, I was depressed after that. Coming back home, just sitting in my house and in my room at the time and looking at the trophies I just won and all that, I thought really it was over. Like I could barely raise my arm.
Right.
I couldn't even go near the gym for about 4 months.
Right.
And then when I did, mentally, I knew I could come back because I once I started working out, I just used a 45-pound bar for everything.
Right.
And I did that for God knows how long. And then I slowly started adding weight. But at that time, to have that all stripping away from you that quickly when I was just maybe I think I just turned 24 at the time. And that was at that cusp year. And it was hard to come back from that. But coming back from that definitely enabled me to appreciate trying to get better. But I felt after that show, every time I still competed, I was playing catch up.
Well, I mean, let's face it. Now looking back, now that your career's over, you were never the same bodybuilder after that. You couldn't make the progress that you needed to make. I think you would have gone all the way had you not had that injury. You would have definitely been on a pro stage competing. Without a doubt in my mind. I just think that you
just couldn't be able to, as towards the end, everything I did was based around, okay, I have to go to the chiropractor, going to Derlin, get my neck constantly worked on, I mean, and being heavy and training like that is not good for it.
No.
But I didn't care. I just,
I know.
Well, I care anyway. As long as I had more left in the tank, I was going to do it.
Well, at some point, I mean, look, when my shoulders got bad enough and I realized, I'm not going to be better than I was the year before, I stopped competing in 04. So, it wasn't, I wasn't 40 yet. I was 33 or 34, but I knew that I couldn't be any better. And so there was no sense in me going back to try to keep doing the same thing. But, it's a moment in every bodybuilder's career where they have to say, oh shit, I'm done. I'm not going to be, I can't, it's an awakening. I think a lot of guys are having trouble accepting that nowadays, Doug. And I see guys sometimes pushing a little too hard, a little too long. And then we see these unfortunate, bodies, accumulating, people dropping dead and stuff like that. And it's important to have that balance, I think. And was Bob a kind of guy that would say, hey, you know what? I think you should retire. You should. That's it.
No. Bob definitely was a realist. And as me and Bob, actually, you figure it this way. I started working with Bob when I was 19. I
Yeah.
stopped working with him when I was 42.
Yeah.
So I had every show I ever did
Right.
was his tutelage some way or another.
Sure.
And he wouldn't tell me to retire. No way. I mean, he knew how much it meant to me.
Got you.
And believe me, though, if he saw my physique to a point where it was really not responding, I still responded, and I responded fairly well after
Right.
that.
Yeah.
But he was always like, not retire. No, he didn't. He would never say that because he knew how much it meant to me.
Right.
But he definitely, like everyone told you, he was an extreme realist.
Yeah.
He knew there wasn't a big thing in bodybuilding. I just watched your thing the other day on why bodybuilders are broke, and it's so good. It's so, you're so spot on with that. And he was the first guy to say, you're working at the gym, good. You're going to be a trainer, good. Make sure. He introduced me, and he knew that, Bob, this is what I'm going to do. He introduced me to certain bodybuilders that was their career.
Right.
So I would hook up with these guys and emulate them and try to say, okay, what are you doing to make money? Bob is all about making money also and having that job. I worked as a trainer and then only took off those last few days before a show. I would save my vacation every year for that week before the show to stay at his house.
You got hungry though once I think you had kids. I think that and I've seen that happen with a lot of people. You have kids, you're like, holy shit, it's not about me anymore. I got to actually support a family now, and I think that's when you started really working way harder. And that happens to a lot of guys. You say you can't live that selfish bachelor lifestyle anymore.
No, you can't, because suddenly there's someone in your house that their protein intake is more important than yours, and it's hard to accept that fact until your wife stares at you and gives you the look like she needs to be fed right now. I'm like, okay, I was going to make a shake. You ain't making a shake. I'll stuff you in the fucking shake. You get her food. I got to get the other kid. You're living it every day.
I'm living it now.
That's
Believe me, I know.
I see you living it. And I was able to maybe do that for a year or two with kids competing. But it's tough. I give anybody credit who's able to do that, especially women. I remember my sister Terry, when she was competing, she won a show once being 4 months pregnant.
Wow.
She was 4 months pregnant, like a local show that she won. And when she won the Miss America, her kids were old enough where they were yelling, "Hey, go mom," in the audience. And that was, that's a great thing to have your kids experience that. But it's tough. Yeah, it's a whole different ball game when there's someone in the house getting up late, and you're going to share, and you can't be selfish then.
No.
You like right now, Dave. You picture you telling me, "No, listen, I got to go eat."
Yeah,
you
sure.
go take care. That's just not going to happen.
No, it's not going to happen. Doug would take me to his mom's pool. Like when we were sometimes we wouldn't go to the beach, we'd go to the pool because we were running short on time. Doug's mom smoking cigarettes, never worked out, abs. Doug's physique exactly, except just not a lot of muscle on her. Talk about genetics, man.
Yeah, and like my sister Terry was actually competing. It was way ahead of her time as far as muscularity goes.
Yeah, she would have been a pro.
Bob worked with her too. Bob saw that. Terry, had an exceptional physique, and she actually lost some shows back in the day because she was too muscular.
Right, because that was when they first started the whole women's movement.
They looked at, they were like, whoa, they weren't ready for that.
Yeah, today she would have done great. Yeah.
And he was big with women's bodybuilding also. Bob helped Bev. Bob helped
people don't
Bev
realize
a lot
that.
too.
Yeah, people don't realize that. He was definitely did Bev's diet, right?
Yeah, he knew. And like I was saying before, when Bob had that last or so 3 days, week with you, it was amazing. And Bob also, I made sure, me, I gotta have fun, if I'm doing it. Like there's no way, like as miserable as bodybuilding is, you gotta have some fun with it,
Yeah.
And I remember going to a show with Bob in the middle of it was Boston. It was a New England State Championships one year.
Yeah.
And we went and did the show, and I wound up winning the show by 1 point. And they announced that too because their local guy lost. And when they said I was from New York, they were booing me.
Yeah.
From New York, Doug Wentz, and the whole audience booed because it was Boston. They hated you from New York. They didn't like that. And there was nowhere to eat. Everything was closed. So me and Bob were walking down the street, and all of a sudden we see a pizza parlor with an open window.
Yeah.
Like you can get the slice. And I was like, are you kidding me? Like, there's a slice right there? We go to get a slice, and Bob's like, all right, make sure you don't eat too much. We got photos tomorrow. I go, Bob, are you kidding me? I'm going to eat about 9 fucking slices right now. No way. Because I was able to rebound. I didn't cold water, but also, like, I remember going to a show with Bob, the first couple of shows, he would bring a suitcase just full of pots and pans and hot plates. I'm like, what's this for? He goes, we're going to cook our own stuff. Because back then, hotels didn't cater to what you want to eat. Yeah. You only ate hotel food after the show.
Right.
You didn't eat that before. There's no way. So we, in the bathroom, would set up the hot plate. We had a pan for boiling rice and oatmeal and the macaroni. I was a big macaroni guy. And we'd bring a frying pan. And the first thing we did when we got to the hotel was go food shopping.
Right.
We would buy fresh meat. And we also had that ratty, nasty cooler full of cold turkey burgers and sweet potatoes, which was like a staple.
Yeah.
And we had that, and we lived in that room, and we ate our food in that little bathroom kitchen. And we converted. We made our own food like that.
Chris Cicino said that they never let the maid in.
Yeah. Who knew Bob? And would come in and eat because we had the good food.
Yeah.
We had the good stuff that you were eating right then. And I thought everybody did that.
Yeah.
I thought everybody bring a kitchen, pots and pans. I mean, can you imagine today, dude, your luggage, Bob's camera bag, pots and pans, a cooler, like you put it in the lobby of the hotel, like what the fuck is this? You know, we were set, man. Forget it. We camp out there. We could live for a week in there if we wanted to.
Yeah. Plus, the whole idea that you showed up with Bob was also intimidating to the other competitors because they knew who Bob was and they knew that Bob was bringing good guys, you know, with them.
Yes. You knew when you went to a show with Bob, you had an edge. I mean, and he also knew to pick the right show for you.
Right.
Like, I remember doing a show, and it was a local show I had to qualify for, and Bob goes, oh, by the way, next week is the Westchester Classic.
Yeah.
Do you want to go to that? And I'm like, okay, let's do that show.
Yeah.
There was now after the Westchester Classic, it wound up being on like a Sunday near Easter or something.
Yeah.
And they were doing another show on a Sunday.
Okay.
There was a show on a Friday they did.
Yeah.
And then on a Sunday was the Westchester Classic.
Oh shit.
It was like 3 days. It wasn't a week. It was 3 days. And I remember going home after the show and late at night, he's like, there's a show tomorrow in Westchester. You want to do it? I'm like, okay. So I drove back to his house. He goes, how's your coloring? I still pretty good. He goes, okay, come over right now. We'll do a coat of coloring. We'll get a diuretic in you. So he just caught me in time because I started eating.
Right.
You know, and I went right back on the diet. And your boy, James Restivo, beat me. He won the light heavies.
Oh, wow.
And I won the heavies at that show.
That's funny.
And he wanted to beat me at that show.
Oh, wow. He probably was peaking just for that show, yeah.
Yeah, so like the next day, I mean, Bob was like, let's go to the show the next day.
That's funny.
Like he took advantage of the fact while you're in shape. And after the show, you didn't really eat because he was worrying that you were going to blow it up if you ate too much salt. I'm
sure promoters probably called Bob and say, hey, Bob, you got any guys you want to bring down to my show? I'm sure they did that all the time with him, too.
He would bring sometimes a couple of us down there. Yeah. And like all the other guys said, you know, you wanted to win. You know, you have a bunch of alpha males down in that basement posing. You know, we all want to be the best. We all want to look good.
Right.
But he was good at everybody was good guys. I don't know if you remember a guy named Alex Sicigano.
Yeah, Alex, sure.
Yeah, Alex was a big kind of giant heavyweight structured guy. And he won a big Jersey show, and it was before the Junior USA. I went to Bob's house on a Monday, a week before the show. Alex shows up and poses, just got done winning.
Oh, no.
And I was like, he left, and I go, Bob, I can't beat him. I can't beat him. There's no way I could beat him. Bob, well, let's see what happens, and you never know, and, you know. Okay, well, lo and behold, the show rolls around.
Yeah.
I start hardening up, and he starts flattening out.
Wow.
So I wanted to beat him at that show.
That's great.
And Bob was a master also with my physique. You know, I didn't really outmuscle guys.
Yeah.
I went up there and tried to have great presentation.
Sure.
Really conditioned, good stage presence. And it's amazing. I owe him so much for teaching me how to be a professional bodybuilder.
Right.
Not a guy just in the gym grunting away, banging away at weights. Like, you know, everything's a different ball game when you're standing there, how you're looking, if you're smiling, if you're not smiling.
Right.
He would sit second row behind the judges and give you cues on your legs and everything. Yeah. And then in between judging rounds, he would run around backstage and get you and tell you what you did wrong, and then run back to get his seat to make sure he got you.
I hated watching how effortless you posed when you would teach me how to pose. It was effortless for you, and I said, I couldn't fathom how that would eventually happen to me because I was such a mechanical person, but it did. But that's something that it was a gift for you because you just your presentation was so much better than everyone else. You beat people that probably you shouldn't have beat because
exactly
you just outperformed them.
Again,
You know?
a lot of that was, I mean, I liked posing.
Yeah.
I'd always key it into different music, and you know,
Right.
and I never practiced a routine. I would just go to a show and just throw it together at that minute.
Levrone said the same thing. He did the same thing. He
Yeah.
nered practiced a routine. Yeah.
No, I never practiced a routine. I practiced my posing. I practiced my other stuff religiously.
Right.
Bob would make you stand there and hold everything for 10 seconds of 3.
Yeah.
You know, 3 sets of 10 seconds of
Right.
holding each pose. And you were wrung out by the time.
Yeah.
I mean, by the time you got to the stage, you were so ready. You know, even though you were diuretic out, you had so much posing endurance.
Yeah.
Like I could outlast guys all prejudging long.
No,
While
yeah,
they're
you were good
fading
on
and
stage,
gasping,
yeah.
I'm still standing there like I can do this all day long. And that's
Captain
what
America,
I
yeah.
made sure that was drilled in you, that you were able to pose like that.
Guys don't have posing endurance anymore. That's another thing I think they don't practice enough. You're right, absolutely right. And you know what? You're the one who told me stand in front of the TV for 15, 20 minutes in the standing relaxed position. You can do that. You'll never be beat on stage. And you were right. That's what I used to do. So
yeah.
Well, Doug,
Really
I appreciate you taking time, telling us some of these great Gruskin stories, you know, reminiscing with me about, you know, how I came up and how you came up in the business. And, you know, it was really the golden age. We didn't realize it back then, but it really was. And hopefully we can take our knowledge and pass it on to this next generation that's coming up in bodybuilding. If we ever have another bodybuilding show again with the craziness that's going on in the world.
It really is. And, you know, it's good to see. I look back and when I saw your tribute to Bob and all with everybody, like I couldn't sleep on some nights because so many things were running in my head of so many times we had going to France and all these great things.
Let's get you back.
And yeah, we definitely got to do it again. But to see now guys like you, Chris Aceto, you know, Justin, all these kind of Bob disciples coaching, it's great to see, you know, because we are really carrying on Bob's legacy in that way. And it's great to see. I'm so glad you did a show on him because no one deserves it more. You know, that guy he's so great to everybody. And I could sit here for 4 hours and go over, you know, great stuff with him. It's amazing. And it's an honor for me to be involved with him and to be lucky enough in that time period to have the exposure to Jerry, all these guys, and Bob. You know, it really changed my life.
A lot of you guys also, I know yourself, you've told me this before off the record, but that Bob was really like a surrogate father to you. I know Chris Aceto told me the same thing. And
really
you know, you didn't have a good relationship with your dad, right? And I mean, that was your dad, basically, you know?
He really was. And for years, I remember going to Bob's on Christmas Day sometimes. Like, you know, I knew he stayed home, you know, he was Jewish. He didn't celebrate Christmas and all.
Yeah.
But he was always home. And I'd say, what are you doing? Nothing. And we would go in his car and drive down in Brooklyn. It was there's a block with lights.
Right.
With Christmas lights.
Yep.
And we would go there. And we would just hang out sometimes and just watch movies. I mean, Bob was there through the birth of my kids. He was at my wedding. He was at the baptism of my kids.
Wow.
You know, yeah. So he was definitely someone that went way beyond, you know, that bodybuilding aspect of it. I was just lucky enough to have him look at me enough to want to work with me. And be able to meet all the great people that he did work with over the years.
And think about if you had never met him, you could have turned into a derelict, I mean, very easily probably, and gotten into some bad shit,
I mean,
you know?
Everything would have been 10 times harder because the struggle just to get to what I got to when he first started working with me, I knew of Bob when he decided, okay, I'm going to work with you. I already knew about him. I knew what he was about. I knew he helped Jerry and all these guys. And I was like, thank God, he's finally going to work with me. Yeah. And then I'm so glad because we locked in so good as friends after that I stayed with him for the next 20-something years.
Yeah,
you know, every year.
It's crazy.
You know, so I'm honored and lucky to be able to experience all that with him.
And I know he's watching over us right now. And actually, right after I interview you, I have Tom Terwilliger coming on, so he's going to give us his experience with Bob as well, which as you mentioned earlier, he was another favorite of Bob. So, Doug, thanks for taking time talking to us, and thanks for being there for me also as I was coming up through my career and teaching me. I can't thank you enough. A lot of that information that you gave me really turned me into who I am today as well. And, you know, so I appreciate that too. And I want you to know that it means a lot to me that you took the time and you took me under your wing, and, you know, you were always kind to me, and, you know, and opened up your house to me, and pretty much said, hey, you know, what I got is what you got, you know?
Yeah. Well, hey, it was a pleasure because like I'll finish off with this. I guess in a way I took over a lot of Bob and helping, you know, get you guys started and all. Yeah. And when I asked Bob, you can make so much money doing this, Bob always said, there's no amount of money that's worth working with someone I didn't like.
He's right. He's right.
You know, and if I liked you, you knew it. If I liked you and you were my friend, you knew it. And I welcomed you with open arms. And it was a pleasure, Dave. That was a great times in my life. And you helped me a lot with a lot of things, too, as you took the nutrition end and all that to another level. And you were always a great critical eye for me. And one day we got to get back on and talk about some of the shows all the good times we had on that cruise.
Oh my God.
And all the things like that. Yes.
That's another show. Yeah.
We're going to talk. That's an adventure in itself. That's a whole podcast right there we could do.
I love you, Doug, man. Thanks so much for joining us today.
All right, buddy.
All right, guys. That's going to take us to the end of another episode of Live With, brought to you by Species Nutrition. I'm Dave Palumbo. We'll see you next time.